Thank you, Susan and Jean, for putting this event together. I know a lot of work went into it. There's a lot of vets out there who fought in the Korean War and then the Chosin Reservoir who have yet to tell their story. And this is my first time at it. Usually it's hard to bring it out over the years. You just don't want to talk or reveal what you went through. But I feel comfortable about doing it today. I'll do my best. At my age, there's a lot of things I'm trying to remember. But over the few weeks preparing for this, I think it's all coming to light. But this is my story. Let me go back to my early childhood. I was born in Tucson, Arizona, back in the early 30s, and had an uncle who kind of spent a lot of time at my parents' home. He was an outdoorsman type of guy, really a wonderful guy. He liked to hunt. He was a prize fighter, and I guess about the age of 19, if I recall, in 1939, he joined the Marine Corps 2 years before the World War II breakout, and became my mentor. Had no idea where he was. I know he's someplace in the South Pacific, but found out later that he was killed in 1942 on my birthday in Corregidor. And so I knew right then and there that when I grew up from a youngster into adulthood again, I want to become a Marine. But anyway, at 17 years old, it's kind of funny, I eloped with my high school sweetheart and had a daughter 1 year later at 18. At the same time, I joined the Marine Corps Reserves in Tucson, Arizona, Easy Company, and couldn't wait. So I got into it for a 3-year enlistment. And 1 year later, the Korean War broke out. Had no idea what Korea was all about until it happened. And in July, we were called to active duty. Just a couple, 3 days later, we were boarding a train from Tucson to Camp Pendleton for additional training and reassignment to our permanent units. I happened to be assigned to a machine gun platoon and 2nd Squad. There was the heavy 30 caliber water-cooled machine guns that pretty powerful. But I teamed up with a lot of strangers from all over the country who were called to active duty as well. But it was just a matter of time before it became a band of brothers. You know, when you got Marines with you, you sleep with them, you eat with them, and you do everything with them. You know, you become very, very, very close. But I had a couple of guys too from the Tucson Marines who were in the same outfit with me. But anyway, after assignment, a few training days, we boarded a ship from San Diego and took off. Had no idea where we were going. All I know is we were going somewhere because of Korea. But hours later, when we were out at sea, we were told, they announced aboard ship that we were going to Japan and then on to Korea. We had a lot of training on that ship. We learned how to use the gun. And just a lot of things were going on, classes and everything else. But we landed at Kobe, Japan, and then went inland to Atsu, Japan, for additional training, about 7 days of training there. And after that, we were brought back to Kobe, where we boarded an LST, a troop landing ship, that took us to our destination. We had no idea where we were going at the time, but we found out pretty quick, like when the guns on the ship start shelling Inchon, planes were strafing it, and bombs and napalm and everything else was just destroying that island. And we were told to mount up into our landing craft. Part of our training was that too. And we took off off the ship, and we're out there circling on the sea while ships continued to shell the island. And all of a sudden, it seemed for hours, but it wasn't quite that long, but everything was quiet and we took off. We landed in Inchon and moved inland behind some tanks. And I mean, all hell was breaking loose. There was a lot of screaming and yelling, and flamethrowers, and tanks were in action, just everything. But as we moved further in, it was getting a little dark, so we were able to take protection under some bomb craters. We were able to find where we could. We couldn't dig too many foxholes. There was a lot of craters all around, so we took cover there. And it was my first night on the strange land, and it was spooky. And I was nervous, as everybody else was. I had something moving in my foxhole. I had no idea it was, because it was dark where I was. And as daylight came up, I found it was a frog. Can you imagine Marie nervous about a frog? But anyway, we continued to move out further, and let me tell you, the stench of death and war is horrible. I saw for the first time what had really happened. I burned bodies laying out of the tank turrets. One in particular that I noticed, what a track from a tank and due to a body. I mean, smashed them as thick as a book cover, and just bodies and parts all over the place. The guys who went ahead of us on the first wave, we were the third wave, really did a more remarkable job. As we were moving towards Seoul, we confronted 4 Russian tanks. I think they're called P-34s. And one of our Marines in our outfit had a bazooka, and he took out one of the tanks. And I understand he was killed, but because of his action, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And the other tanks, of course, were destroyed as well. But we did go through Seoul, and it was, like Susan pointed out, very, very devastating. It was just in ruins. Marines and the Allies did a wonderful job pushing out the North Koreans. It's a shame to see a city like that in totally in destruction and burning and everything else, but you know, it's part of war, I guess. I recall one time where we took a break. I was at a corner of one of the streets there, and I saw this North Korean soldier arguing with a civilian who had a bike. And I was probably about maybe 10 or 15 feet away at the time, and I was watching this argument going on between those two. And all of a sudden I saw this North Korean put out his rifle and executed right on the spot. And man, that was a shocker. It really was. He found out later that he was stealing grenades, and for what purpose, I have no idea, but it wasn't a thing to do, I guess, at the time. So that was my first execution that I saw. But as we moved on down toward the north, I believe it was around the Wonsan area, we encountered an ambush. We were on a truck convoy, these covered canvas type truck convoys with benches, and we're moving up these winding roads up the mountain area, and all of a sudden we were hit hard. North Koreans were up in the hills, they saw us coming, and they opened up on us, and killed quite a few Marines at that time. And a patrol or two went up after them. I understand that 92 of those North Koreans were killed. I remember that because I had a vivid memory of having to load those warm, dead bodies of the Marines into a truck. And boy, that was a sorry sight. It was just a hard thing to do. But they brought down 3 of the prisoners, from what I understand. And as we were pulling out in the truck, I saw these 3 prisoners of war lined up at the edge of the steep, steep cliff. And I imagine at that time they had no policy, take no prisoners. And they were lined up, bayoneted in the back and shot on the way down. So they just executed them. They just didn't want to mess around with it. The Marines were mad what they did to their buddies, and they took care of the problem right away. But anyway, as we headed further north to the Chosin, we had no idea where we were going. All I know is that our unit, the 1st Marine Regiment, was assigned to Coterie. And the first part of the battle was, to my understanding and my opinion, it was at Hagaruri and Udamni further north, west and east of the Chosin Reservoir, not too far from the Yalu River, where the Chinese came across to attack us. But The Army up there at the Udemni area took a lot of casualties. There was a big battle going on over there, and as did the Marines at Hagaruri. Kudari, you know, we didn't feel the results of the battle yet. We had these pyramid-type tents we were living in, and it was cold. I mean, it was cold. We were issued cold weather gear. I guess it was sometime in late November, if I recall. Cold weather gear of parkas, gloves, boots, shoe packs that helped but didn't really resolve the problem. It was just always cold. And you know, we had to change our socks quite a bit and keep a pair of wet ones against our body to dry them while we put another pair into the shoes to keep our feet warm. But I remember one evening I was at Chosin with the rest of the guys. We were fortunate to have just finished up some hot chow. They had a little line out there where they were probably cooking a couple of cases of sea rations for us and call it hot chow. Because every time we ate, of course, it was cold out of the can, frozen food, basically. But we start receiving some incoming. By that, could be mortar fire, whatever it was. And we were ordered to get into our foxholes. And we just casually picked up our gear and got into our foxholes. Now, our tent that I was in was about 30 feet or so away from my foxhole. It was on a slant of a hill. There were two other foxholes in front of me, and up above the hill there was our machine guns and the rest of the squad. Well, we had seen some of our allies go through our lines early on in white parkas, and as well as the Royal Marines. They were going further north, and I assumed that we spotted some of these guys coming at us in white parkas. I thought they were all friendly, when in fact they weren't. Because all of a sudden they opened up on us, and it was a Chinese communist. They had broken through the lines up in Udemni and Hagaruri coming at us as well. I recall that it was getting toward dusk. We had to send up some flares to light up the area so we could make sure we were shooting the right guys. But two of the guys in the foxholes in front of me, took off up the hill, because we could see these communist Chinese coming at us in full force. I have no idea how many they were. All I know is all hell was breaking loose. Machine guns were going off up above the hill, and we need to get out of those foxholes. We were totally exposed toward the tent side, and everybody else was on the other side, on top of the hill. So the Marines in front of me, those two foxholes, scrambled on top of the hill and got out of the way. The one Marine that was in my foxhole took off as well and left me all alone. So I was alone up on the side of the hill, fully exposed on this landed foxhole as the Marines came up to my left flank. And they had these Russian burp guns. They were just opening up fire on my tent. And I mean, they just riddled it. But I knew I only had an M1 carbine at the time, so I was able to get a round off. And everything froze up on my rifle. It was just, wouldn't function. So I knew that the only way I had a chance to live was to play dead. So I lay perfectly still in that foxhole. It was a frozen foxhole at the time, as they came around my left flank, because I knew I would have been seen. Someone on top of that foxhole on the ridge saw what was going on and started pitching grenades at them. And I was caught in the middle, of course. Thank God no one wasn't a short pitch. But it did the job. All I heard at that time was a lot of moaning and groaning, and the wounded were dying and everything else. So it gave me an opportunity to get out of there and up again with the rest of the guys, which I did. So the fighting went on all night, and next morning it was dead stiff bodies all over the place. They fell just as they died, and stiff, and they dug a trench, buried them, and left them that way. We were ordered to go, and a couple days later we headed. It was about a 40-mile walk back to Hung Nam, through the snow and the mountains and the winding roads. It took us several days to get back to Hung Nam, but during that time I had frozen feet, Took about 30 weeks of constant massaging to get the circulation back on that. But we boarded a ship there, and took us to safe ground where I spent my first Christmas in Mason, and got together with some of my Marine buddies from Tucson, and it was great. Just to see those guys, and several of them still alive today. And the war continued on, of course, after Christmas. We had Mass. One of my Tucson Marines sang a Christmas song for all of us. And I'll never forget it. We were really homesick, first time away from home. But after that, the war continued until I was rotated back to the United States back in June of 1951. But one other instance during those months before, after Chosin, I recall we were on this particular mountain expected to be attacked, and we did. One night they came up from our left flank, and then the North Koreans from our right flank, and all hell broke loose. We were watching the right flank, our machine gun unit. The guys on the left took the worst of it, had the Koreans into their foxholes. That's how close they got. But we survived. We were ordered to fix bayonets, but we didn't have to use them at the time. But we were ready. And but anyway, I had an opportunity to get rotated back in July, back to Kobe and to San Francisco, and served the remaining years of my duty on base at Point Magoo in Oxnard, California. There's a lot more I'd like to tell you about. It's going to take a couple more hours, but I think others have a few stories to tell too, so we'll talk about it maybe afterward, okay? Thank you. Thank you.